What is up, Z-Pack? It's your boy, Z-Dog MD, Dr. Zubin, Damania, and I am here on Oahu's North Shore with the amazing Reverend Dr. Michele Shields, Director of Spiritual Care Services at UCSF, now emerita, living on Oahu, chasing her passion of racing outrigger canoes, which is amazing. Yeah. But Michele and I had communicated before, and we were talking about, well, what is the role of the chaplain in an interdisciplinary team, especially, and by the way, you guys got to see where we are. I mean, come on. She gets to live here.
Yeah.
It's not fair. Let's walk over here so we get less shadow and more amazing beautifulness. Wow. So Michele and I were talking about the role of chaplains in an interdisciplinary team, particularly at end of life and palliative sort of circumstances, but also just in general, because so many of us in healthcare, we know chaplaincy as Father Mulcahy from MASH, who was amazing, by the way. But we don't understand how deep it goes and how it can help our patients heal. I want to ask a question that I think is on many people's minds, especially those of us who are a little reductionistic in healthcare. We want to know what spirituality even means. If you're director of spiritual services, what is spirituality to you?
Well, I take a kind of holistic view that everybody is spiritual, and that from different disciplines, we're just looking at the same person through different lenses. So the lens through I look at a patient or a person is really about three things. It's about the universal need, all people, no matter what faith, tradition, race, religion, whatever they are, or no religion, they have three core spiritual needs. So it's about the meaning, the need for meaning and direction in life. It's about the need for self-esteem and belonging to community, and the need to love and be loved. And when things go wrong and relationships are broken or harmed, then it's about reconciliation. So those are the three things that all people need. And a lot of folks describe spirituality really exclusively to meaning and direction. But that, when a person is in a health crisis or any kind of crisis really, their core spiritual need emerges, and that's what they want to talk about. So not everybody talks about questions of meaning, like where is God in this, or why is this happening to me? I've been a good person. Not everybody talks exclusively about meaning, nor does everyone have a lot of questions, but that's true of the person with a core need for meaning and direction. Another group of people, when they get into a crisis, tend to really focus on, the relationships that are broken around them, and they may create conflict between themselves and the medical team as well. So these are the folks that get labeled, unfortunately, as our difficult patients.
Oh, we know those patients, Z-Pack. And so this spiritual need is a central part of the difficulty, you think?
Yeah, so when I get a referral, or when I used to get referrals about somebody being a difficult patient, I would say, that's the person I want to visit. So this was music to the team's ears, because that's the person that's really hurting, because they don't intentionally break relationships, but they have a certain level of anger and other blaming going on. And that can be problematic in their relationship with the team, but also with other people and with a higher power. So I want to talk with that person about, take a different kind of approach with that person to see if they can accept some responsibility and come to relate a little differently to the people around them. And also maybe to heal some broken relationships from their past or current times. Yeah. So, and then the third group of people are the people that have kind of a little bit lower self-worth. They don't feel worthy. These are people that are really appreciative of the interdisciplinary team. And they really need a sense of belonging to community. And I know in some cases, the team becomes the community that they're surrounded with, the caring community at that time. And they can be helped to look after their own needs where they might have been spending a lot of time taking care of other people's needs.
Now see, already, guys, you get the sense that chaplaincy isn't coming in and talking about God necessarily.
Right.
It's about addressing these spiritual needs which affect the medical needs.
Yeah.
And you talked about the difficult patient. How many of us have so much transference around those patients. In other words, the borderline patient that's splitting the team, or someone who's angry about they didn't get their turkey sandwich on time, or they're dilaudid, or there's a control freak who's there. And you gave a great example in one of your papers of a guy who had an MI, and he's there with his laptop and his personal assistant, and the chaplain comes in. The whole team is very upset. The nurse is, telling him to stop. And the chaplain comes in and in a very short period of time, by being there and embodying a certain image to the patient says, you know what, I'm actually having an affair, and it's driving me, crazy with guilt, and so on. And so these kind of things, it's almost like a psychiatric or psychological consult in addition to the spiritual aspect.
Well, we're trained in psychology as well. My theory is based on object relations theory, which is about healing taking place in relationship. So it's the between us that causes the healing to happen. So we use the relationship between us and what we embody to the person to kind of help them heal. So with each different type of person, I will embody something different. So for the reconciliation person that needs reconciliation, I would say that I embody more of a kind of a tough love approach to help them accept some responsibility for what's going on. Like that heart attack patient, he was actively having the heart attack when the nurse took away his computer and his laptop and his busyness. And I said, so what's going on with you? And, what's causing all this stress? And he said, well, it's really clear that I have too much going on in my life, and that I'm having this affair as well as being married, and it's, I'm just dragged in two different directions, and I just can't sustain that any longer.
Yeah.
And it was, what we embody is, in some instances, we embody a higher power and a different kind of source of authority. And so this guy just came right out and confessed that. Yeah. And so some people are kind of ready to come to grips with broken relationships, and some people aren't, but might be called to think about it and reflect on it. And in some cases, it takes a little bit more direct confrontation. So, how it doesn't serve them maybe to not get along with the healthcare staff. Right. So that's one kind of patient. And say a victim of domestic violence might be a person that really has low self-esteem and is very isolated. And so the chaplain can be more nurturing, supportive, affirming, and really also, help the team not to judge, but also to support and care and help the person realize that there is somebody with them, alongside them, to help them kind of make different decisions for themselves based on their own needs rather than their fears.
Let me ask a question. So you touched on this, the team's needs. So we often leave them out of the equation, especially in the brave new world of the measurement industrial complex, where we are just vehicles to attain certain outcomes. We're not human beings with transference and feelings and emotions and a sense of self-worth and all the things you talked about, this feeling of loving and being loved, feeling of community versus autonomy, feeling of meaning and purpose. If we ignore that on the caregiver side, it's going to affect, in my mind, the patient side. How do chaplains deal with team dynamics, or do they?
Yeah, we definitely do. I mean, chaplains really consider the whole team part of their care as well. So when we assign chaplains to different units, they become kind of the pastor to the unit, and not just to the patients. And you guys are our continuous
flock.
Church members or flock or congregation or whatever. You're the ones that we see most often. And so we really get to know you guys really well. Like I used to work in the emergency department and
at UCSF?
Yeah. Well, actually at another hospital. I worked everywhere at UCSF. But I worked in Oxnard.
Oh yeah.
And at St. John's Regional Medical Center.
St. John's represent. Leave some comments, guys.
Yeah, so I used to get to know the ER folks really well, and so it was, they would often say, "Hey, chaplain, come over here, look at this." If the person had an unusual situation, like a plane rolled over the foot of somebody somebody and the foot was degloved.
Oh, degloving injuries are the worst.
Yeah, it was really gross. But anyway, yeah, so I saw everything. There was a guy that had a tattoo on an unusual body part. Perhaps he had been drunk.
Oh.
So they called me in. Chaplain, come look at this. But the person was out of it. But yeah, they like to call me in unusual cases. But they also, said this person attempted suicide.
Right.
This person, died in a car wreck, and we're preparing the body now, so we want you to be able to bring in the family and talk to them. After the doctor delivers the bad news, we want you to stay there with the family, of course.
Yeah.
And help them to view the body. And so it's there is a lot of tragedy and crisis, and the team really helps, especially when they're busy. Really calls upon the chaplain to help deal with the emotional impact and spiritual impact of grieving and just being lost in the face of a death, or being totally bereft and shocked. In those initial stages, it's really important for the chaplain to be there.
Well, so let's walk a little, because it's so beautiful out here. And I think what you're saying is so important for those of us on the front lines to understand how we can better utilize chaplaincy to accomplish actual healing and outcomes that we care about, right? Now, so two things in what you're saying. One is, it sounds like you're dealing with a lot of tragedy, which means a lot of end-of-life stuff. So one of your subspecialties, it sounds like, was in the sort of palliative space, at least in terms of your academic work.
Right.
And in palliative care, people coming to terms with cancer, with a potentially terminal diagnosis, with finding sense and meaning in illness, and also life review, also relationship repairment, repairment, is that a word? It's French, repairment.
Yes. Very good.
I conjugated that verb in real time, ZPAC. And those kind of things. But so here's a question, and we can talk about that, but the elephant in the room is atheists, agnostics, people like myself who don't fall into a standard church, but actually consider themselves spiritual. So, meditation, idea of connecting to a bigger than yourself thing. How do you work with them at end of life when there's a sense of, well, there's no afterlife and it's just this, and there's annihilation on the other end of this? How do you think about that or approach that with people who maybe don't have a faith of that nature? Yeah.
Well, my point of view, my theory is really that all people have these core spiritual needs, for meaning and direction and belonging to community and to love and be loved. And so they're universal human needs. And so these they might find expression in the community of a faith community, a congregation or a faith community, or they might find expression in other realms. Like, I think a lot of people feel a calling to healthcare, for instance, to be doctors, nurses, social workers, healers. And so, the calling itself, you could say that gives you a source of meaning and direction in life. And so it's, you asked about healthcare teams. When we work with healthcare teams, sometimes it's about recovering that sense of calling to the profession and why they actually got into this in the first place.
Tell me about that. So are you dealing with a lot of burnout more so in your later career than you did early on, or is it the same thing?
I think as I went along in those 30 years, I think I learned more about the healthcare team by getting involved with different healthcare teams. And burnout is kind of a universal problem, but more so in the last few years with how much time we spend in administration and paperwork. And even I felt, kind of caught up in that in terms of the report making and report giving. And all the computer systems and reports that we had to do as like the head of a department. So
even the chaplains are getting burned out on the administrative stuff, because you have to document in Epic 12-point spiritual review of systems negative except as noted above, and click the boxes.
Yeah, exactly. So we built our own Epic system for spiritual care.
Oh, wow.
To integrate it into the places in the charting where it would be most seen. And so that was important to us. So refer to UCSF Medical Center for that if you're interested.
Epic templates on spiritual care?
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
But I think, that these core universal spiritual needs are true for everyone, whether they have an explicit faith tradition or not. Like, you could say that I get a sense of belonging to community not only from church but also from my paddling community.
Right.
You know, so I think that, you know, I really feel like we're kind of church on the ocean.
Yeah.
You know, and that gives me a strong sense not only of spirituality because it's so beautiful here. The ocean is so gorgeous, and to be out on it every day is just incredible. So I think that one of the things that I love so much is that nature connects us to God and to a sense of something greater than ourselves. And so it really kind of depends on you know, what really inspires you, what inspirits you. And that's kind of the question for people. Where do they find their source of nurture and strength? And when they're in a crisis, how do they make decisions? You know, what do they draw upon? What values, things like that, do they draw upon? And in ethics, in making ethical decisions too, then a lot of that is about what are people's values and what are their goals of care. And chaplains can really be a great assist in teasing those things out. So whether you have a faith tradition or not, really isn't about necessarily your spirituality. Certainly it is for people that do have a faith, but for people that don't believe in a particular faith, they still have these core spiritual needs, and so they can be met in a real variety of ways. So one of the things that I haven't talked about is the embodiment. So every
tell me
person,
about this.
So every person embodies or incarnates, for a Christian, a spiritual guide to the patient. They may be helping them make decisions. They may be helping them find their values. They may be helping them perceive what their own needs are and not just what the needs of their family or people around them want them to do.
And this could be a nurse. This could be a CNA. This could be a dietitian.
Yeah, it could be anybody. Yeah, because these are things that we address in every person's life. And so it's a lot more holistic, I think, than just thinking of spirituality narrowly as religion.
Well, and I want to punctuate that, because I know that even the word spirituality is a trigger for a lot of people who are so deep in the sort of reductionist scientific game that they don't realize that spirituality isn't just necessarily a faith tradition. It's like what you said. It's all that package of things. I came to a sense of my own spirituality late in life as a card-carrying atheist and Sam Harris devotee and all of this. And when I moved to Las Vegas, and suddenly my whole life was turned upside down, and I had to find meaning and purpose again because I'd lost it. For me, you know, everything from meditation to having these interactions with people gave me a sense of community, of purpose, of loving others, and then forgiving myself for all my own failures, which are numerous, too numerous to count, as we say in the lab. And for me, that woke me up then to accept other people's way of reaching their own spiritual needs and embracing it. So that was important for me, which is why when you had reached out by email and we connected, I was so excited, because I thought, you know, I always loved our chaplains at Stanford, and one of them was a doctor who kind of burned out and went back as a Jewish guy.
Rabbi.
Rabbi, and he went back and did chaplaincy and really found a sense of meaning and purpose.
Actually, he wasn't a rabbi, but he was a really good Jewish chaplain.
Is that right? So you know him? Yeah. And I remember seeing him speak somewhere and just being very moved by it, by his sense of purpose and connection, which I think that's what we all struggle for, Z-Pack. That's why I think we like to come together here, although we get to be on the islands, y'all get to be wherever you are. Nurses station, deal with it. Close that drink because Jacob's coming. I'm just saying. But the idea that we come together as a tribe because we have a common sort of sense of meaning. We're trying to help each other while helping our patients and do something that feels like it's spiritually correct for us. So one of the things I wanted to ask you though was, how about chaplains' needs? So you were saying you see these horrible things, and we talk in healthcare all the time on our show about burnout and PTSD on the front lines of EMS and nursing and doctors. What about you guys? Who takes care of your needs?
Well, you know, I always think when I was teaching in medical school, I was talking to about not being at an objective distance from a patient, but allowing them to impact you and to really care for them, because once again, that's really part of one's embodiment with the patient. It's the healing that happens in relationship. So you really want that relationship to not be professional, distant, but really caring and intimate. And to be able to do that without burning out is to be able to fill your own cup as well and do the things self-care wise that will really help you get your own spiritual needs met. So having your own sense of community, having your own sense of self-esteem, not just pleasing other people, having your own relationships reconciled and in good order so that you really truly feel loved and comfortable in the world, and then having a sense of purpose and meaning, and so that one can really take satisfaction in helping people just moment to moment. You know, when I was working with like say people that are demented or Alzheimer's patients, it's about caring in the moment, you know, for that
that's all
moment.
they have. Yeah,
for that moment you're going to make their day better. It's not about a long term, do they even remember when you leave the room? It doesn't really matter in that sense. It's more about being kind and healing in the moment. And that's, you know, where music comes in, and
poetry.
Poetry by the bedside.
I think I want to put a coda on that piece, because I don't know what a coda is, but I heard it said in music once.
Oh, good.
And so I'm going to use it because I want to look smart in front of someone who's vastly smarter than me. So the idea that to take care of ourselves and help with this idea that we have purpose and meaning, being in the moment in a patient's room, maybe sitting down for a minute, maybe understanding that what you say matters so deeply to that patient who's not seeing people all day, even the one who's obnoxiously on their phone, talking, angry at the staff. Think about what could actually be happening in their world, the sense of powerlessness, the being in the hospital, what they're out of control. And you know, you told a story in one of the papers that I read that of yours, which, by the way, academic chaplaincy, that's a thing. Like the fact that you can research and understand and better understand real outcomes that happen from the intervention in spiritual needs is tremendous to me. And I'm glad you're a pioneer in that, because we need more of that, because it's going to win over the reductionists who feel like, well, if we can't be clicked or measured, we shouldn't be doing it. Well, you can actually.
It can be measured.
It can be measured. Exactly. This idea, you told a story about a young girl whose parents were distant alcoholics, where she was sick in the hospital, and the chaplain, it might have been you that saw her.
It was.
And her conception of God was a distant, detached figure who, you know, judged from a distance, but it wasn't a personal connection. And so you were trying to understand, I think, a little better, if I'm understanding the paper, what her spiritual needs and where she's coming from. And you asked her, well, where's an example of a relationship in your life that was more close? And she cited her nanny as this relationship where, and you said, what's your nanny's name? Oh, it's X. What if God was named X? And the girl started to cry. And you start to realize the very powerful nature of the intersubjective embodiment that the chaplains bring. And I remember just being moved by that story, because I could see that. I've seen patients like that.
In fact, I used a poem with her too. It was about, I think it was something about what if God said yes to you? And it was all about, her asking permission of God. Can I do this? Can I do that? And God called her sweet cakes. Sweet cakes, you can do anything you want, because I love you. And she cried, because it was kind of like it meant so much to her. It was so much like the attention of her nanny. So when we talk about embodiment, her nanny really embodied that loving, caring God that she had not recognized, in her adult life. And so she came back into relationship. It was like when you ask somebody, who is the most loving person to you and what did they do? Tell me something about them. Like for me, my mom, I'm thinking of her because it's her birthday today and she's passed away. But I think of how she held me in her lap. I was an adult. I was like in my 20s and I was going through a divorce. And she helped me. She said, come sit in my lap. I said, no, Mom, I'm going to crush you. She said, no, come sit in my lap. And I sat in her lap, and she just hugged me while I cried. And I thought, that embodiment was God's love coming through her. And that's the kind of caring and support and just unconditional love that we can exude to our patients, no matter how badly they're behaving in this crisis, that really matters to people, And if you think about God is love, which actually I'm a United Methodist, so the Bible's important to me. There's a passage that says God is love. It's the love that happens in relationship that we can embody to our patients, and it takes a different face based on what the patient needs. But at that moment, I had felt like such a failure, going through a divorce, especially as a minister where it was really not okay, that I needed that affirmation and nurture so much in that moment. And she really embodied the face of God to me, And to me, that's exactly what healing can happen in relationship. It's not putting patients on our laps, don't worry about that. It's really about embodying the nurture and affirmation and support that people need, or about maybe more of asking people to accept responsibility for their own lives and decisions, and not to alienate others, but to try to understand. Or maybe it's, helping them come to some understanding, guidance that they need in that moment. Maybe it's from their faith tradition, but maybe it's from their sense of connection to nature. And these different faces, I would say, are needed to help people get in touch with their own resources. It's never about converting people. It's always about working with the patient's own resources. But the heart of that is all love. Which I think that kind of compassion is universal in different faith traditions and beyond.
I'm not crying, you're crying, Z-Pack. That is amazing. And so guys, again, everyone on the front lines who takes care of patients, administrators who don't touch patients but are part of something bigger, all of us are looking for meaning and connection and purpose. If you had one call to action from this about how teams can better employ chaplains and work with chaplains, what might it be? What might you tell folks?
Call the chaplain.
Call a chaplain. Let them do their thing.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid of it, and embrace it.
Yeah.
And get to know your chaplain too, right?
Yeah,
because
absolutely. Yeah, we're all about healing too. It's about spirituality, but that includes everybody.
I love it.
Yeah.
The Reverend Dr. Michele Shields, Director of Spiritual Care at UCSF, now Emerita, which is the feminine of emeritus. And it is a joy to see you here in Oahu on this beautiful island.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Look at this.
Yeah.
I mean, we're blessed.
We are.
I'm only blessed for a minute because I got to go back. She gets to own this. I love it.
Yep.
Thank you, Z-Pack. Is there any way they could reach out to you or ask you questions or things like that, or is that?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. I can put some way that you can get comments sent to you. You can private message me and I can connect you. If you have questions about chaplaincy or any of the magical things that she does.
Or our academic work.
Or the academic work, which I think is worth reviewing. This Spirit AIM protocol of spiritual assessment and intervention model is really, really interesting, because it's a way you can actually go through these steps in a reproducible way to address people's needs. I think it's,
and we've done a lot of training with interdisciplinary teams in that as well.
That's wonderful. Yeah. And we need more of the interdisciplinary stuff in our lives, people. All right, Z-Pack. Thank you, Michele. What a pleasure.
Thank you. It's great to meet you.
I should say mahalo because I'm like hella pigeon.
Mahalo nui. That's right.
She's better than me. We out. Peace. Look at that.